The rain lashed the glass, a whip hidden in the dark. I received a text from my mother's phone. "I'm not dead. Cemetery now." My father texted immediately after. "Don't make a scene." Under the old elm by the grave, the figure who stepped out wasn't my mother. It was Vivian Cole, brushing mud from her leather gloves. "You're late," she whispered, and just like that, everything I knew about my family, about Green Meridian Group, began to shatter with the rain. My name is Harper Green. I am 29 years old, and I'm standing in a downpour in Greywater, Washington, watching a mahogany casket lowered into the earth, my mother's casket. They said it was closed for preservation reasons. I think it was closed to hide something. The air was thick with the smell of wet earth and lilies, a cloying, suffocating perfume. The rain wasn't a drizzle. It was a cold, relentless assault, blurring the edges of the manicured cemetery, turning the grass to mud. Each drop that hit the polished wood of the coffin sounded like a tiny, insistent knock. My father, Martin Green, was not here. He was, according to the official statement from Green Meridian Group, attending an emergency investment conference in Maui, a necessary, unavoidable obligation to the shareholders, but the company's own social media, just hours ago, had posted a professionally lit photo of him on a balcony, smiling beside his new, remarkably young assistant. The caption spoke of securing new horizons. His absence was a void, a cold, calculated space that sucked all the warmth from the meager gathering. I stood under a black umbrella, feeling the chill seep into my bones. Across the way, standing apart from the handful of distant relatives and company associates, was Vivian Cole, my stepmother. She wore a tailored black coat, and, despite the rain, or perhaps because of it, she wore immaculate leather gloves. The sight of them, so smooth and dark against the gray light, sent a shiver through me. It was a strange detail, a cold one. She didn't weep. She watched the casket with an unsettling stillness, as if it were a business transaction being finalized. My gaze drifted from her to the edges of the ceremony, a figure huddled near the iron fence, almost hidden by a weeping angel statue, a woman in a standard-issue blue plastic raincoat, the kind hospitals use. She seemed out of place, her posture rigid with anxiety. Her eyes darted around, landing on me. I met her gaze, and she flinched, turning away so quickly her hood slipped, revealing a scrub cap, a nurse, or a care worker. Her sudden fear was a spark in the damp. Then my phone vibrated in my coat pocket, a heavy, insistent buzz against my hip. It was difficult to retrieve. My hands numb and clumsy, I pulled it out, shielding the screen from the rain. A new message. The sender ID made my heart stop. It was my mother's number. The text was simple, terrifying. "I'm not dead. Cemetery now." As I read the words, the world tilted. The drone of the priest faded. A new sound cut through the rain. The heavy, iron tolling of the church bell from the town square. 1, 2, 3, it struck 12. Noon, the moment the ceremony was scheduled to end. My father's voice echoed in my head. A text he'd sent this morning. The same one he'd sent before the hook. "Don't make a scene." It was his lifelong mantra. The Green family motto. Keep up appearances. Maintain the facade. Don't let the cracks show. But this message, this impossible signal from beyond the grave, was a crack that threatened to split my world open. I was trapped between my father's command to be the grieving, composed daughter and a primal, screaming instinct that this was all a lie, a performance, an elaborate, cruel conspiracy. My mind flashed back 3 months. We were in my mother's gallery. Isabel Green wasn't just a corporate wife. She was a curator, an artist, a force. Her gallery was her sanctuary, her independence. Martin had stood by the largest installation, a swirling vortex of reclaimed metal, and laid out his plan. He didn't ask. He informed. He was siphoning her gallery, merging its assets into the Green Meridian Group. "It's inefficient, Isabel," he'd said, his voice that smooth, reasonable tone he used before a hostile takeover. "We'll absorb the overhead. It's better for the bottom line." "It's not a bottom line, Martin," she'd countered, her voice quiet but vibrating with steel. "It's my life's work. It is not yours to absorb." She refused. The argument that followed had been cold, precise, and brutal. He'd left, promising to revisit the issue. Now, I watched the rain hammer her casket. It hit the wreaths laid out beside the grave, tearing at the white roses, the petals scattering and dissolving into the mud. A perfect, brutal metaphor, her legacy, her life, being washed away, dirtied, and buried. "Don't make a scene." "I wouldn't, not here." I let my umbrella tip, obscuring my face. I murmured something about needing air and slipped away from the small cluster of mourners, moving toward the cemetery's side gate, the one used by the groundskeepers. My heels sank into the mud, but I didn't care. The old elm tree stood near the gate, its branches bare and black against the sky. The tree from the hook, and there, pressed deep into the mud beside its massive trunk, were fresh tire tracks, not the thin tracks of a sedan, but the deep, aggressive tread of a heavy SUV. I reached down, my bare fingers brushing the damp earth. The tracks were sharp, the edges not yet softened by the relentless rain. They were new. I scanned the service road, no vehicle, but I could smell it, the faint, acrid scent of a hot engine and exhaust, lingering in the wet air. The engine was still warm. The lights had been off. Someone had been sitting here, watching, waiting, and had left only moments ago. A twig snapped behind me. I spun around, my heart leaping into my throat. It was Vivian. She was standing under the dripping branches of the elm, her leather-gloved hands clasped in front of her. She hadn't followed me from the grave. She had been waiting here. "He warned you," she whispered. Her voice was flat, devoid of grief. "What are you doing here?" I demanded, my voice low and shaking. "Someone else is coming," she said, ignoring my question. Her eyes flickered past me, toward the main road. "You shouldn't be here." "Who? Who is coming?" "The people who clean up. The people who make sure scenes aren't made." Before I could process this, a movement caught my eye. A shadow detaching itself from a large granite mausoleum 50 yards away. A figure in dark clothing, moving with fluid speed. The person darted behind a line of tombstones, paused, and bent down. When they straightened up, they were gone, vanishing toward the back wall. It was too fast, too deliberate. Vivian watched the spot where the figure had disappeared. "He's left it for you." "Left what?" "Go look." My feet felt like lead, but I moved, breaking into a half-run, stumbling over the uneven ground. I reached the cluster of tombstones, my eyes scanning the muddy grass. There, tucked against the base of an angel statue, was a small, waterproof nylon envelope, the kind runners use for cash. My fingers, slick with rain, fumbled with the seal. I ripped it open. Inside, 2 things. First, a tiny micro-SD card, black, anonymous. Second, a small piece of paper, folded twice. It looked like a torn corner from a prescription pad. On it, written in hurried block letters, KM 412, changed meds. KM 412. As the letters settled in my brain, a sound sliced through the rain. A distinct, mechanical click whir. A camera shutter. I froze, scanning the perimeter. The sound had come from the hill overlooking the cemetery, from a grove of dark pine trees, too far to see anyone, too far to know who. But the message was clear. I wasn't just finding clues. I was being watched. I was being photographed receiving them. A cold, hard knot of fear and rage formed in my stomach. This wasn't grief. This was a hunt. I shoved the card and the paper deep into my coat pocket, my hand closing around them. I turned and walked back to Vivian, who hadn't moved. She stood under the elm, a perfect, cold statue. "What is this, Vivian?" She stepped closer, the rain dripping from the brim of her black hat. She was so close I could smell the faint, expensive scent of her perfume, a scent I associated with my father's office. She leaned in, her lips almost brushing my ear. "Just sign," she whispered, her voice a cold hiss. "Sign the papers he gives you. Don't ask questions. Don't embarrass him. Don't make a scene." She pulled back, her gaze flat and hard. She turned and walked away, her heels clicking on the stone path, rejoining the mourners just as the priest was saying his final words. I stood alone under the elm, the rain plastering my hair to my face. My hand was clenched so tightly around the memory card that its sharp edges dug into my palm. KM 412, changed meds. The nurse in the blue raincoat, the closed casket, the social media post from Maui, the leather gloves, the SUV tracks, the camera shutter. I wouldn't go to the Greywater police. I knew better. My father's community fund was a polite term for the checks he wrote that kept the entire town, from the mayor to the chief of police, in his debt. They wouldn't investigate Martin Green. They would investigate me. I gripped the card. No, I would do this myself. I would find out what KM 412 meant. I would find out who changed the meds. I would find out who was in that SUV. And I would find out why my stepmother was threatening me at my mother's grave. My father wanted me to sign the papers and be quiet. I would sign nothing, and I was about to make a scene that would burn his entire world to the ground. I didn't drive home. I walked. The 2 miles from the cemetery to my apartment overlooking Blackwater Bay felt like wading through wet concrete. The rain never let up, and the cold had settled deep in my chest. The micro SD card was a sharp, tiny rectangle in my fist. KM 412, changed meds. My apartment was my fortress, floor-to-ceiling glass, biometric locks, a security system I had designed myself. It was the one place in the world Martin Green's influence couldn't touch me. Or so I thought. I bypassed the main lights, heading straight for the utility closet that housed my security server. I didn't want to see the apartment in its usual warm light. I wanted the shadows. I pulled up the access logs for the past 2 weeks. My blood chilled. There were hundreds of entries. Me, the cleaning service, a delivery drone, all time-stamped, all verified by facial recognition, except one 1 week ago, Tuesday, 2:17 a.m., a 4-minute window where the system registered a maintenance override, an override code I had never issued. Someone had been in my apartment. They hadn't taken anything. The pressure sensors and inventory logs were clean. They had been looking or planting. My sense of violation was absolute. This wasn't just paranoia. The perimeter had already been breached. I went to my study. I didn't touch my desktop. I didn't touch my primary laptop. I went to the closet, behind a false-backed panel holding old art supplies, and pulled out a laptop that had never once touched the internet. My air-gapped machine. I powered it on, the simple, text-based operating system booting up in seconds. I sat on the floor, my back to the wall, and inserted the microSD card. 1 folder, 4 files. I opened the images first, 3 of them. The photos were crisp, taken in harsh, fluorescent light. The first was a standard-issue pharmacy bottle. The label was in sharp focus. Patient, Isabel Green. Location, Kensington Medical. Room, 412. KM. 412. The second photo was a close-up of the drug name, a powerful beta blocker for arrhythmia. The third photo made my breath catch. It was a macro shot of the cap, the safety seal. The thin plastic ring that snaps when you first open it was wrinkled. It hadn't been snapped. It had been carefully bypassed, likely peeled back with heat or a solvent, and then clumsily reapplied. The seal was tampered with. My hand was shaking. I closed the images and clicked the 4th file. It was an audio file, just a few seconds long. I hit play. First, a hiss of static. Then, in the background, a soft, 2-note chime. Ting-ting. Over it, a man's voice. It was deep, resonant, and clipped. A voice steeped in privilege and indifference. A voice I did not recognize. He said only one sentence. The insurance value will balance the books. The recording ended. I played it again. Ting ting. The insurance value will balance the books. Not her value. The insurance value. It wasn't grief. It was accounting. I stared at the black screen. I had the what and the where. I needed the who. I needed the nurse. I powered down the clean laptop, removed the card, and went to my primary machine. I booted up a secure virtual interface and started digging. Marin Hale. I remembered the name from a donation gala. I found her digital footprint. Faint. Locked down. I sent a message to a throwaway account I found linked to her name. I was at the cemetery, the one in the blue raincoat. I got the package. We need to talk. As I hit send, my primary phone, the one I used for family, lit up. The name on the screen, Martin Green. I let it ring twice. Composing my voice, I answered, pitching it low, thick with a grief I didn't feel. Hello? Harper, you left. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact, a note of displeasure. I needed air, I whispered. We all need to be strong, he replied, his voice the smooth, polished obsidian he used for boardroom takeovers. It's an unfortunate time, but the market waits for no one. There are formalities regarding your mother's estate, asset transfers. It's time-sensitive. I knew what that meant. It meant her gallery. I've scheduled a preliminary signing, he continued. My office, 8 a.m. tomorrow. A notary will be present. It's just a formality to reassure the partners. Reassure the partners. My mother has been dead for 3 days, and he's managing shareholder anxiety. That's fast. These things are best done quickly. Harper, don't be late. We don't want to make this harder than it is. The line clicked dead. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't say he loved me. Seconds later, a text message from a number I didn't recognize. Vivian. Smart women know when to be quiet. Don't disappoint him. The 1-2 punch, the hammer and the anvil. He gives the order. She provides the threat. They were trying to box me in, to rush me into signing away my mother's legacy before I had time to even process her death. Or her murder. I went to my desk, pulled out a physical notebook and a pen. I wrote at the top of the page, Risk Assessment. Below it, Asset 1, Data, Card. Asset 2, Witness, Nurse. Threat 1, Martin, Legal Financial. Threat 2, Vivian, Intimidation. Threat 3, Unknown, Watcher of Photographer. My phone buzzed, a reply from Marin Hale. I can't, they're watching me. They suspended me this morning, indefinitely. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I don't need a meeting. I need a yes or no. The note said, KM 412, changed meds. Was it Isabel Green's room? A long pause. 10 seconds, 30, then a single word. Yes. I had it. Confirmation. I wrote in my notebook. Phase 1, collect. Phase 2, preserve. Phase 3, find witness. I was now in Phase 2, preserve. I needed Nadia Volkov. Nadia and I had built our first encrypted network in a dorm room with a stolen server. She'd gone on to become a security engineer in Northbridge, the kind corporations paid 6 figures to find holes in their systems. I sent her the audio file over the most secure channel I had. Nadia, I need 2 things. Clean the vocal track and identify the background noise, that chime. She was a night owl. The reply was almost instantaneous. File received. That's a weirdly specific chime. Give me a minute. While I waited, I prepared for 8 a.m. I knew what would happen. They would ask for my phone. They might even try to search my bag. They would say it was protocol or security. They would be looking for the card. I took 2 identical USB drives from my desk drawer, one black, one silver. I used a small prying tool to carefully crack open the plastic casings. I swapped their internal boards. On the black drive, I loaded a decoy folder, photos of my mother, old gallery invoices, things that looked sensitive but were ultimately useless. This drive now looked like my silver drive. On the silver drive, I loaded the real evidence, the 3 photos, the audio file, The screenshots of my conversation with Marin Hale. I encrypted the partition. This drive now looked like my harmless black drive. The real data was now in the bait casing. The bait data was in the real casing. A simple shell game. My screen flashed. Nadia. Okay. The vocal is just that one line. The insurance value will balance the books. The voice signature is male, mid-50s, no discernible accent, but the chime, that's the prize. What is it? I typed. It's an Echelon 700, custom-tuned, used almost exclusively for high-speed executive elevators in prestige builds. I ran a check on installation contracts in Greywater. And? Only one building has them, Meridian North Tower, your father's headquarters. I stared at the message. The rain hammered the glass as if trying to get in. The conversation hadn't just been about my mother. It had happened inside my father's building. The voice belonged to someone with executive-level access. Ting, ting. The sound of the elevator that led directly to my father's penthouse office. I was mapping out the connections, the insurance, the elevator, the tampered meds, when a tiny red light blinked on my desk console. It wasn't the main alarm. It was a proximity sensor on the west-facing window, the one that led to the fire escape. I froze. The display wasn't reporting a breach. It was reporting a pressure variance. Sensor W1. Latch engaged. Pressure variance. 3 millimeters. Someone was on my fire escape. Right now. They weren't smashing the glass. They weren't kicking the door. They were testing the lock. Gently. Professionally. Checking for a weakness. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. My hand went to the power switch on the console. I killed the lights. The entire apartment plunged into a blackness matched only by the storm outside. I grabbed the silver USB drive, the one with the evidence, and the original microSD card. I backed away from the window, into the central hallway, my eyes straining against the dark, my ears filtering the roar of the wind for the sound of scraping metal, of a prying tool. Nothing, just the storm. They were here. They knew I had the card, or they suspected I did. They had tested the lock and found it secure. For now. I sat in the dark, my back against the cold drywall, clutching the drive. Don't make a scene, my father had ordered. Smart women know when to be quiet. Vivian had threatened. They thought I was a grieving daughter, weak and pliable. They were about to find out how wrong they were. I leaned my head back. You want me to walk into the tiger's den? I whispered to the shadows. Fine, but I'm going to make him look in the mirror. I stayed there, unmoving, until the first acidic gray light of dawn began to silhouette the windows. I checked the sensor. The pressure variance was gone. They had retreated. I set my watch alarm for 20 minutes. I didn't sleep. I centered myself. When the alarm chimed, I stood. I showered, the water scalding hot. I dressed in a severe black suit. I pulled my hair back into a tight, merciless knot. I put the decoy USB in my bag and the real one in my coat pocket. I was ready to play the good daughter. The lobby of Meridian North Tower was designed to make you feel small. It was a cathedral of white marble and cold air. A 4-story water wall occupied the entire left side, the sound of it a muffled, constant roar, like a caged ocean. Opposite, a wall of seamless LED screens projected a rotating digital rendering of the New Harbor project, Martin Green's billion-dollar legacy. The air smelled of polished steel and ozone. It was exactly 7:58 a.m. My father was waiting by the main elevator bank. Not alone. He wore a suit the color of a shark's skin, and his smile was a masterpiece of political warmth, utterly devoid of actual heat. Beside him, slightly behind his right shoulder, stood Vivian, a shadow in a sheath dress, her platinum hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. She didn't smile. She just watched me approach, her eyes 2 chips of ice. "Harper," Martin said, stepping forward, arms open for an embrace I did not want. I allowed him to brush his cold cheek against mine. "Thank you for coming. A difficult day, a difficult time." "Father." "Let's go up. Aubrey is waiting." The executive elevator was glass and steel, rising so fast my stomach dropped. It didn't stop at any other floors. It went straight to the penthouse level, the executive wing, and as we arrived, the elevator chimed. Ting, ting. The sound was a jolt, a physical shock. I froze. It was the exact chime, the double note. Custom-tuned ring from the audio file. The insurance value will balance the books. The words echoed in my head, now tied inextricably to this specific space. I looked at Martin, at Vivian. They noticed nothing. The doors opened directly into the executive lobby, a vast expanse of dark wood and glass overlooking the city and the bay. It was designed as a show of force, a declaration that from here, you could see everything. Martin's assistant, a young woman named Aubrey Klein, was waiting. She was sharp, efficient, and looked like she hadn't slept. She held a thick, leather-bound document folder. Mr. Green, Ms. Cole, Ms. Green. She nodded to me, her eyes lingering for a moment. A flicker of something I couldn't place. Pity? No. Assessment. The notary is scheduled for this afternoon. Excellent. Aubrey, bring the documents into the office, Martin said, gesturing. We walked into his corner office. The room was dominated by a desk that looked carved from a single block of black granite. The two walls of glass gave a 180-degree view of Greywater. And on the wall behind the desk, there was the painting. Bridge over Mist. It was one of my mother's favorites from a local artist. A swirling, abstract piece of deep blues and grays. It was also, as I had known since childhood, the door to his private safe. Aubrey placed the folder on the desk and opened it. This is the asset transfer and indemnity agreement, she said, her voice a crisp monotone. It covers the consolidation of the gallery's assets, the art holdings, and the associated properties, moving them under the Green Meridian Trust, as discussed. Martin leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. A formality, Harper, to protect your mother's legacy, to ensure it's managed efficiently. Vivian moved to stand by the window, her back to us, looking down at the city. I stepped forward and looked at the signature page. It was a stack of paper nearly 2 inches thick, and at the bottom of the final page, above the line for the notary, was the signature. Isabel Green. My mother's name, in her familiar, flowing script. It was perfect. The loop on the I, the sharp cut of the L. It was a beautiful, meticulous, and absolute forgery. My breath caught, and I used it. I let my shoulders hunch. I put my hand to my mouth, letting a small, choked sound escape. I looked at my father, widening my eyes, letting the real shock I felt morph into the appearance of overwhelming grief. I can't, I whispered. I touched the signature, my finger tracing the fake ink. I can't. Not here. Not today. Martin's smile tightened by a fraction of a millimeter. Impatience. Harper, I know this is hard, but as I said, it's time-sensitive. The partners didn't just bury their mother, I snapped, then immediately softened, letting my voice break. Please, Father, please, just let me read it. Let me just sit with it. At home. I'll bring it back this afternoon for the notary. I promise. I need to read what I'm signing. For her. I had him. To refuse a grieving daughter's request to read her mother's final papers would look monstrous. Even for him. To Aubrey. To anyone who might be listening. It would be a crack in the facade. He sighed. A long, suffering sound. Of course. Harper. Of course. Take it. But, Aubrey, he said, turning to his assistant. Clear my schedule at 4 p.m. We will sign at 4 p.m. sharp. The shareholders have a deadline. Yes, Mr. Green. Vivian turned from the window. Don't make a scene here. Harper, she said, her voice loud enough to carry through the open office door. Your father is under enough pressure. We are all grieving. There it was, the narrative. I was the unstable, emotional daughter. She was the calm, supportive wife. Martin was the burdened leader. The staff in the outer office, I knew, would have heard her. The seed was planted. I won't, I said meekly, clutching the binder to my chest. As I turned to leave, my gaze swept the office one more time. The painting. Bridge over mist. It hung slightly askew, as if it had been opened recently. The keypad, I knew, was on the right, and on the polished steel frame of the doorway just opposite. I caught it, a faint, greasy smudge, the reflection of the ambient light on the keypad, caught on the steel, and in that smudge, 4 dim squares, slightly cleaner than the rest, the ghost of a fingerprint, 4 numbers. My eyes flicked to the credenza, 2 crystal glasses. One, near his desk blotter, was clean. The other, pushed to the side, held the dregs of water, and on the rim, a tiny, almost invisible smear of cobalt blue paint. I froze. My mother hadn't painted in years, but she had never stopped touching. She would get paint on her hands from a gallery piece, from an art book, from a restoration, and that specific, deep cobalt was her signature color. She used to call it the color of a deep breath. She had been in this office. She had drunk from that glass, but Martin's glass was clean. Someone else had been in the room with her, someone who wasn't my father. A chime on Martin's desktop. "Ah," he said, looking at his screen. "Harper, before you go, it seems our internal audit team has scheduled a random device compliance check for this whole floor. You'll need to leave your laptop and phone with them. Standard procedure. Security." A trap? A clumsy, arrogant trap. He must have seen me flinch at the elevator. He knew I was suspicious. He wanted the decoy USB in my bag. "I didn't bring my laptop," I lied smoothly. "And I left my phone in the car. I didn't want ringing. Not today." Martin's eyes narrowed. "That's inefficient, Harper." "It's respectful," I countered. 4 p.m., Father. I walked out, Aubrey following to see me to the elevator. I kept my head down, playing the part of the broken child. As I did, I mapped the hallway. The main security cameras were obvious, domes in the ceiling every 20 feet. But there, between the executive lounge and the art storage closet, the closet where they held pieces being valued for the corporate collection, was a gap. A structural column and a large ficus plant created a perfect 6-foot blind spot. I could get from the lounge to that closet door unseen. And that closet, I knew, backed onto Martin's office. The elevator arrived. The ting-ting chime was a mockery. Aubrey stepped back. "Ms. Green." I stepped in, and just before the doors closed, Vivian appeared. She stepped in with me, pressing the button for the lobby. "A word," she said, as the glass box began its silent, terrifyingly fast descent. We stood in silence, the city rushing up to meet us. "He's being very patient with you," she said, her voice low. "He's a patient man. Your mother wasn't—" I turned to look at her. Her reflection in the glass was superimposed over the skyline, making her look like a transparent, judging God. "What does that mean?" She smiled, a thin, cruel twist of her lips. "He's protecting you. You know, protecting her reputation. You're so convinced you're the hero of this story. Harper, but was your mother as clean as you think?" The doors opened to the massive lobby. The roar of the water wall filled the silence. I stepped out, my hands shaking. I clutched the fraudulent contract to my chest. It wasn't just a threat. It was a seed of doubt, a new variable. Was she? I walked across the white marble, my heels echoing like gunshots. My phone, the real one, vibrated in my pocket. I didn't look until I was through the revolving doors and back in the cold, wet graywater air. It was an anonymous, encrypted text. One image, a grainy, long-lens photo. My mother. She was laughing, her head tilted back. She was sitting in a restaurant booth, her hand on the arm of the man opposite her, Dr. Lennox Ward, her cardiologist. The caption was 3 words: "Start here." I stood on the sidewalk, the rain starting to fall again, mixing with the water from the wall. I was holding a binder full of lies. My head was full of Vivian's poison. and my phone held a picture that could mean anything, or everything. I was trapped between my fury at my father and a new, sickening suspicion about my mother. I looked back at the tower. It was a spike of black glass piercing the sky. I would be back. Tonight, I would get into that safe, and I would burn them all. Kensington Medical was a fortress of beige brick and tinted glass. It smelled of antiseptic, floor wax, and something vaguely like boiled vegetables. I didn't go to the admissions desk. I went to patient records. The woman behind the counter didn't even look up from her screen. I need to see the medical records for Isabel Green. Are you the executor of the estate? She asked, her voice a monotone. I'm her daughter. I can't release anything without a notarized executor assignment, a death certificate, and a Form 703, privacy laws. She was my mother. I just want to see her file. Privacy laws, she repeated, and finally looked at me. Her eyes were flat. There's a note on this file. All inquiries are to be directed to her primary care physician's office. Who was that? I asked, though I already knew the name from the anonymous text. Dr. Lennox Ward. Is he in? Dr. Ward is on an unscheduled sabbatical, effective this morning. A dead end, a freshly built wall. I thanked her and walked away. But I didn't leave the building. I went to the main atrium and found the hospital directory. Room 412, the number from the note, was in the cardiac care wing. The pharmacy that serviced that wing was in the basement. I took the service stairs. The sub-level pharmacy was a sterile white box, separated from the hallway by a thick glass window. A pharmacist in a white coat was dispensing medication to a nurse. I watched from the end of the hall. This wasn't where I needed to be. I needed the lab, the place they handled the inbound shipments. I followed the corridor, past biohazard, past laundry, until I found a door marked Pharmaceutical Receiving. It was propped open by a rubber wedge. I slipped inside. It was a small room, cramped with steel shelves, cardboard boxes, and blue plastic shipping totes. On a stainless steel counter, a dozen sample vials sat in a rack, waiting to be logged. They were identical to the one in the photo, right down to the blue cap. I picked one up. I looked at the seal. It was smooth, perfectly joined. I twisted it. Snap, it broke cleanly. I opened another. Snap. I picked up a third, looking closely at the cap. Then I smelled it. A faint, chemical odor, different from the antiseptic smell of the hospital. It was adhesive, a non-standard, industrial glue. It was the smell of something tampered with, something put back together. The photo was real. You shouldn't be in here. I spun around. It was her, the nurse from the cemetery, Marin Hale. Her blue raincoat was gone, and she was in standard issue scrubs. Her face pale and strained. She wasn't holding a phone. She was clutching her locker key, her knuckles white. You're Marin, I said. You sent me the message. No, I didn't send anything, she said, her eyes darting to the hallway. I don't know what you're talking about. KM 412, changed meds. Her face crumpled. Get out. You have to get out of here. They're watching everyone. They're watching me. Who is they? You're Harper Green. I know who you are. Your family. They own this place, or as good as. My father does, I said, my voice low. I don't. Tell me what you saw. Marin, please. That was my mother. She stared at me, her chest rising and falling. She was trapped, and she knew it. She looked down the empty hall, then back at me. She made a decision. Not here. She grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong, and pulled me across the hall into a small, dark break room. The air was stale with the smell of burnt coffee. She didn't turn on the light. I was on shift, she whispered, talking fast. The night before, your mother was fine. She was sharp. She was arguing with her doctor about her discharge papers. She was stable. Dr. Ward? Yes. He kept insisting on a new treatment, a higher dose. She didn't want it, but he pushed it through. He changed her phlebotomy orders. He changed her medication protocol. The beta blockers. Yes, but that's not. That's not what I saw. I was on my break. Around 2 a.m., I was walking back from the lounge, and the camera in the west corridor, the one pointing at room 412, was off. It was just a black screen at the nurse's station. Was that normal? Never. It was out for exactly 17 minutes. I timed it. When it came back on, I saw someone leaving the secure pharmacy room. Someone who wasn't a doctor or a nurse. Who? She was in a suit, blonde. Looked like she came from an office. I thought it was admin, but it was 2 in the morning. My blood ran cold. Aubrey Klein, I said. Marin's eyes widened. How did you... I checked the access log for the automated medication cabinet, the one in the hall. It's fingerprint locked. Dr. Ward accessed it at 10 p.m. to stock the new prescription, but the main supply cabinet, someone else accessed it after midnight. The log just says, A. Klein, admin override. Marin, you have to tell this to the police. The police? She laughed. A short, hysterical sound. My supervisor called me this morning, said there were patient complaints about my erratic behavior at the cemetery. They found my car parked outside. I'm suspended, indefinitely, pending an investigation. They took my badge. As if on cue. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, looked at the screen. It was an unknown number. She paled, her hand shaking so badly she almost dropped it. She answered, putting it on speaker. Hello? A voice, electronically distorted, rasped through the small speaker. You talked to the wrong person. Marin, you should have stayed quiet. Stay away from the hospital. Stay away from the family. Stay away from everything. The line went dead. Marin Hale began to cry, silent, terrified tears. They're going to destroy me, she whispered. I took out my phone. Tell me again, I said. Tell me everything. From the beginning. What are you doing? I'm recording. It's not for the police. It's for me. It's the only leverage you have. Tell me. She did. She told me about the 17-minute blackout, about Aubrey Klein's name in the log, about Dr. Ward's insistence on the new protocol, even after my mother refused. She told me about the pressure, the feeling that Ward was being forced. Her voice was steady, fueled by a mixture of terror and rage. When she was done, I stopped the recording. I took the silver USB drive from my pocket, the real one, in the decoy casing, and plugged it into my phone. I transferred the audio file directly to the encrypted partition. They'll take your phone, she whispered. They'll find it. They can try, I said. I handed her a business card. This isn't my number. It's a woman named Nadia. If you are in real trouble, if you think they're coming for you, you call it, say the word echelon, nothing else. I left her in the dark, in the smell of burnt coffee. I walked out of the hospital, into the harsh light of the afternoon. The binder of forged papers was still in my car. 4 p.m., I had a deadline. As I walked through the parking garage, my steps echoing, a black sedan pulled up beside me, a BMW, gleaming and silent, the back window lowered. It was Vivian. Get in, Harper, she said. I'm busy. Get in the car, unless you want the men in the black SUV 3 rows over to ask you instead. I looked, a black Escalade, tinted windows, no plates, Argus shield, my father's corporate security, the goon squad. They weren't just testing my locks, they were following me. I opened the door and slid into the back of the BMW. The leather was buttery soft and smelled like Vivian's expensive perfume. She hit a button, and a privacy divider slid up, sealing us off from the driver. You're an idiot, she said, her voice trembling. You went to the hospital. You were at the cemetery. You knew. I knew you were being set up. I knew they were watching. You told me to sign the papers. You're part of it. She turned on me, her eyes blazing, the icy calm gone, replaced by a raw, jagged panic. You think I knew? You think I knew he would kill her? The words hung in the air-conditioned silence. I knew about the insurance policy, she whispered, her voice cracking. A new one, a massive one. He took it out 6 weeks ago. I thought it was just corporate, a keyman policy, but I didn't know about the medication. I didn't know about any of this until I heard him on the phone with Aubrey, talking about the complication with the coroner's report. The insurance value will balance the books, I said. Vivian's face went white. How do you know that? He's sloppy. His team is sloppy. You're all sloppy. You have to get out. Harper, he's not just trying to take the company, he's cleaning house. And you're a loose end. Why are you telling me this? Don't make a scene, she spat, mocking my father's words. I've lived by that. I built my life on it. But this is not a scene. This is a slaughter. Your mother. She was a fool about art. But she wasn't stupid about him. She was getting out. What do you mean? She was seeing a lawyer, a woman named Catherine Vale, a shark. They were preparing a financial exit. She was planning to leave him, to take her gallery, her art, everything. She was going to drain him. And he'd found out, and he'd acted first. He's going to pin it on me if it goes bad, Vivian said, her composure returning, but now it was brittle. He'll say I was the jealous wife. He'll use my text messages. He'll say I did it. And you? He'll say you were unstable, grieving, that you found the pills and he was just trying to protect his unstable daughter. He has a narrative for everything. She was right. He had already started. Vivian reached into her purse and pulled out a single, heavy key. This is for the house at Lake Opal, not the main house, the old storage room, by the water. Your mother kept things there, things she didn't want in the gallery. He's sending a disposal team there tomorrow morning to clean it out. If you want to live, be quick. Find what she hid. She pressed the key into my palm. It was cold and sharp. Vivian, I said, why me? Why now? Because he'll throw me away just as fast as he threw her away, she said, her eyes dead. I'm just another asset, and I'm not going to be liquidated. Now get out. Don't let them see us talking too long. She hit the button. The window lowered. I got out. The BMW pulled away smoothly. I stood there for a moment. The black Argus Shield Escalade started its engine. A low, predatory rumble. It didn't move. It just watched me. I got in my car, placed Vivian's key in my pocket, and pulled out. The Escalade followed. Keeping a perfect, professional 3-car distance, I was being herded toward 4 p.m., herded toward the signing. My phone buzzed, a secure message, from Marin. I'm scared. I'm leaving. If I disappear, send the file to the Northbridge Ledger. They're the only ones who ever wrote a bad word about Martin Green. I didn't text her back. I wouldn't endanger her further. I wouldn't go to the local police. I wouldn't go to the Ledger. Not yet. I opened a new channel on Nadia's secure network. Nadia, I need a contact. Federal, white-collar crime, or, worse, someone clean, someone in Seattle. The reply was fast. Agent Elena Morales, FBI, organized crime and fraud. She's ex-military, eats people like your father for breakfast. Why? Send her my data package, the whole thing, the audio, the pictures, the recording of Marin Hale. Tell her I'm being forced to sign a fraudulent document at 4 p.m. today at Meridian Tower. Tell her it's a don't make a scene situation. I was driving toward the tower, the black SUV a shadow in my rearview mirror. The reply came. Morales received it. She says the data is compelling but circumstantial. She says the signing is a domestic matter. My heart sank. But Nadia's next message came. She also says, if you are willing to act as bait, she's very interested in catching a high-profile corporate officer committing fraud in real time. I looked at the forged binder on the passenger seat. I looked at the SUV in my mirror. Bait. Tell her I'll be there, I typed. Tell her to be ready. Nadia was a digital ghost. She sent the file at exactly 10:20 p.m. It wasn't a program. It was a string of temporary code. My employee keycard, when swiped, would now transmit this string, authorizing one-time access to the executive floor and overriding the after-hours lockdown. It would last for exactly 20 minutes before the string dissolved and my card reverted to its normal, low-level access. "The night security shift change is at 10:30, she'd messaged. "The primary guard, his name is Ben, likes to read. The system's camera feeds will appear to be buffering for a kernel update for a 4-minute window starting at 10:40. That's your window to get from the lobby to the blind spot. Go." At 10:38 p.m., I walked into the Meridian North Tower. I wasn't the grieving daughter anymore. I was a technician. Black pants, black turtleneck, soft-soled boots. The massive lobby was silent. The water wall a distant, hollow roar. Just as Nadia predicted, the guard at the main desk, Ben, was leaning back in his chair, his feet up, a paperback novel open in his lap. He was overweight, breathing heavily in his sleep, his chin resting on his chest. I didn't even have to be silent. I walked to the executive elevator bank. I swiped my card. The light flashed green. The elevator chimed its arrival. Ting-ting. The sound vibrated in my bones. I stepped in, the doors sealing me in the glass and steel box. The ascent was silent, a vertical glide through the dark skeleton of the building. The doors opened. The executive floor was dark, lit only by the emergency exit signs and the faint, ambient glow of the city through the floor-to-ceiling windows. I was exposed. The main camera was 40 feet away, aimed directly at the elevator. I checked my watch. 10:41. The feed should be buffering. I moved fast, staying low, my boots making no sound on the marble. I didn't head for the office. I went left, toward the executive lounge, and slipped behind the structural column and the oversized ficus plant. The blind spot. I was in. From here, I was invisible to the hall cameras. I was in a dark, 6-foot channel of shadow. To my right was the art storage closet. I jimmied the simple lock with a thin piece of metal from my kit. It clicked open. I slipped inside. The closet smelled of canvas, oil paint, and wood varnish. Racks of paintings, draped in white cloths, stood like silent, shrouded figures. I didn't turn on the light. I used a low-beam penlight, shielding it with my hand. I went to the back wall, the one that abutted my father's office. Just as I remembered from the blueprints I'd studied years ago, there was a technical niche, a small access panel for the ventilation and wiring that fed the CEO's office. It was held in place by 4 simple screws. My hands were shaking, but my mind was cold. I worked the screws, my multi-tool silent. They whined softly as they came loose. I placed them in my pocket. The panel came free. Behind it was a dark, cramped space, thick with dust and insulated pipes, and to the right, exactly as it should be, was the back of the bridge over mist painting and the metal housing of the safe. The keypad's wiring fed directly into a junction box here. I didn't need to wire anything. The safe was high-end, but not designed for this kind of specific, internal attack. I could see the back of the keypad mechanism. I didn't have to guess the code. I could see the smudges on the internal contacts, the 4 numbers from the reflection. But I tried my theory first. The company's founding, 1989, the chime, 02. I keyed it in from my side, 198902. A heavy thunk echoed from the office. The safe had unlatched. I held my breath. I couldn't access the safe from here. I had to go back out, into the hall, and into his office. I had just announced my presence to anyone who might be listening. I sealed the panel, replacing only 2 of the screws, and slipped back out of the art closet, locking it behind me. I crept from the blind spot to his office door. My keycard, still hot with Nadia's code, flashed green. I was in. The office was black. I didn't use my light. I walked by memory to the painting. My fingers finding the frame, I pushed it aside. The safe door was ajar, the small green unlocked light glowing. I pulled it open. It wasn't full. It was curated. A few stacks of bearer bonds, some foreign currency, and the important items. First, a slim, dark hard drive, unlabeled. I plugged it into my portable cloner. The data began to transfer, a slow blue light pulsing on the device. Second, a leather-bound notebook. I opened it. It was my mother's. It was filled with her elegant script, notes on art, gallery finances, and then something else. Page after page of architectural sketches, notes on structural integrity, and a symbol I recognized, a triangle with a line through it, the engineering symbol for a cutting beam or a load-bearing point. She was analyzing the building. She was analyzing this building. Third, a thick vellum envelope. I pulled out the document. It was the insurance policy, the one Vivian had mentioned, the policy on Isabel Green, and there, in the fine print of a special addendum, was the clause, "In the event of undetermined death, payout is accelerated and doubled." It was signed by Martin Green and countersigned by someone I didn't recognize, Marlo Green, CFO. While the drive cloned, I dug deeper. At the very back, a simple manila envelope. My name wasn't on it. Nothing was. Inside was a single photograph, the same one I had received anonymously. My mother and Dr. Lennox Ward, laughing in the restaurant booth. But this one was different. Someone had taken a thick red marker and drawn a vicious X across my mother's face. I stared at it, a cold dread washing over me. The handwriting, the sheer violence of the X, was manic. It was filled with rage. It was not my father's controlled, precise hand. This was something else. This was personal. The cloner's light turned solid green. The copy was complete. I put the notebook and the policy back. I put the original drive back. I left the envelope with the X photo. I was about to close the safe when I stopped. Forensic marker. I took a breath. I pressed my right thumb, hard, onto the cool steel edge of the inner safe door. I left a perfect, clear print, a marker, proof that I was here, proof that would force them to acknowledge a breach, a piece of evidence that could be legally requested. I had just become a witness to my own crime. I closed the safe. Thunk! I swung the painting back, straightening it. I turned, and the elevator chimed. Ting, ting. My blood turned to ice. Someone was coming up. Now. My 20 minutes were long gone. My card was dead. I couldn't get out through the elevator. The main doors to the stairwell were alarmed. I had one option. I ran. Silent as a shadow. Back to the art storage closet. Slipped inside and pulled the door shut to a mere crack. I moved to the back, to the unsealed ventilation panel. I pulled it free and squeezed into the dark, dusty space, pulling the panel back into place, holding it with my fingers. I heard the ting-ting again. The elevator doors opened. Footsteps, 2 sets, one heavy and measured. My father. The other, a sharp, quick click of heels. Aubrey. "The alert was from this floor," Aubrey said, her voice tight. "It's nothing," Martin grumbled. "It's a system update. Ben is asleep at his post again. I'll have him fired." "Martin, the audit flag on the safe." "The safe is fine." I heard the clicks of the keypad. 198902. The thunk of the safe opening. Silence. I held my breath, the dust in the niche making my nose itch. Then, a low, guttural sound. A single word from my father, breathed like an obscenity. "Who?" I heard him pulling things out. "Who touched this?" "What is it?" Aubrey's voice was sharp with panic. "Is it gone?" "The drive is here. The policy is here," he growled. "But it's been moved. Someone was in here. Someone was in my safe." "It's impossible," Aubrey whispered. "The keys, the codes." "It's her," he snarled. "It has to be. That ungrateful. She was always too curious, just like her mother." "What do we do if she has copies?" "She has nothing. She's emotional. She has no proof. We accelerate. We push the signing, and we clean up our loose ends." "Vivian?" Aubrey asked. "Vivian first," he said. "She's weak. She's been acting strange since the funeral. She's a liability." I heard him pick up his desk phone, the soft beep of the numbers. "Get me Argus Shield. I want a tail on Vivian Cole, full time. I want her to know she's being watched. I want her to be afraid." A pause. "Yes, scare her. Make sure she understands what happens when she disappoints me." He hung up, I heard the safe door slam shut. Thunk. "Let's go," he said. "We'll deal with this. We blame Vivian. If anything comes out, we say she's unstable, trying to frame me, trying to get Isabel's money." "Yes, Martin, of course." Their footsteps receded. The elevator chimed. The doors closed. Silence. I waited 5 full minutes, my heart hammering so hard I thought it would burst through my chest. I pushed the panel, slipped out, and screwed it back in place, my hands shaking so violently I almost dropped the screws. I cut my hand, a sharp, stupid pain, a long gash on my left palm from a raw piece of metal, a stray screw on the panel's frame. Blood welled, dark and hot. I didn't have time. I wiped it on my pants and finished the job. I crept back to the hall, to the elevator. I couldn't use it. I went to the alarmed stairwell door. I had no choice. I pulled it open. The alarm blared, a deafening, pulsing shriek that filled the entire floor. I didn't run. I walked. I walked down 54 flights of stairs. The alarm ringing in my ears. I knew the security protocol. The alarm would route to the front desk. Ben, the sleeping guard, would wake up, see the stairwell alert, and check his camera. He would see me, my employee card visible. He would assume I'd forgotten something and took the stairs. He would groan, disable the alarm, and go back to his book. When I burst out into the lobby, he was already on the phone, rubbing his eyes. Yeah, it's just Ms. Green, false alarm." I walked out of the revolving doors, into the cold, 3 a.m. air. The city was asleep. The hard drive cloner was heavy in my pocket, my hand throbbing, wrapped in a napkin I'd found in the stairwell. A car was parked across the street, the black BMW, Vivian. She was waiting. She got out of the car as I approached, her face a pale mask in the streetlight. She wasn't wearing her perfect coat. She was in a simple trench coat, her hair down, and she was shaking, not from the cold, from pure, unadulterated terror. "We chose the wrong side," she whispered, her voice shattering. "He's going to destroy us. He'll kill us both and say we did it." "He knows I was in the safe," I said. Vivian let out a small, strangled cry. "Then it's over." "No, it's starting." I looked at her, the woman I had hated for years. "I have the data. I have leverage. But I need a witness. I need you to tell them everything. The insurance policy, the threats, the cover-up." "Testify? Against him?" She looked at me as if I were insane. "He'll have me killed before I ever see a courtroom." "Agent Morales, federal. She can offer witness protection." Vivian was about to answer when her phone buzzed. She pulled it out, her hand shaking. She looked at the screen, her face turning from pale to ashen. "What is it?" She showed me the screen, an anonymous text. "Don't trust the woman under the tree, M." My blood ran cold. The woman under the tree. That was Vivian, at the cemetery. "Who is M?" I asked. "I don't know," she whispered. "But they're watching both of us." "Marlowe," I said, the name forming in my mind. "Marlowe Green, the CFO. He countersigned the insurance policy." I looked up at the dark tower, a monument to my father's ego. He wasn't just working with his assistant. He had his entire finance department in on it. "Get in your car and drive," I told Vivian. "Go to a public place, a 24-hour diner. I'll send Nadia. She'll get you to Morales. Go now." She looked at me, her eyes wide with fear. And for the first time, a flicker of trust. She got in her car and sped away. I stood alone on the sidewalk, my hand bleeding through the napkin, my pocket heavy with my father's secrets. The game had changed. He thought he was hunting me. He didn't realize I was building the trap. I didn't go home. I couldn't. The apartment, with its compromised locks and invisible ghosts, was no longer a fortress. It was a cage. I drove to an anonymous hotel near the airport, paid in cash, and locked myself in. My hand, wrapped in cheap gauze from a gas station, throbbed in time with my pulse. The cloned drive felt toxic. I couldn't keep it. I wiped it clean of my prints and arranged a dead drop. Leaving it taped beneath a table at a 24-hour coffee shop, Nadia, my digital ghost, had a proxy pick it up. Within an hour, the entire contents were encrypted and in the hands of Agent Elena Morales. The call came at dawn. It wasn't a call. It was an invitation to a secure, encrypted voice channel. Morales's voice was all business, sharp and cold, with no room for sympathy. Ms. Green, your father is either sloppy or arrogant. I'm betting on arrogant. What did you find? I asked, pacing the small, stale room. Your hard drive was a gold mine. The transfers are massive, but Martin Green's name is nowhere on them. He's too smart for that. Then who? The money is being funneled through two shell corporations, Harbor Finch LLC and Salt Rook Incorporated, both registered to a post office box in Delaware, the signatory. The individual who authorized every wire transfer out of your mother's accounts and into these shells isn't your father. Who is it? A lawyer named Catherine Vale. The name hit me like a physical blow. Catherine Vale, I repeated, my voice hollow. That's impossible. Catherine was my mother's lawyer. She was her friend. Vivian said she was helping my mother get out, helping her plan a financial exit. Well, Morales said, her voice devoid of emotion, it appears Ms. Vale was the definition of a conflict of interest. She was billing your mother to plan her escape while simultaneously signing the checks that funded her prison. She helped Martin drain the accounts, all under the guise of protecting them. She's the bridge. The betrayal was so complete, so profound, it left me breathless. My mother hadn't just been married to a monster. Her one trusted ally had been holding the door for him. There's more, Morales said, pulling me back. We need to talk about your witness, the nurse. Marin Hale. What about her? She's gone. What do you mean, gone? Gone where? Did you find her? We went to the apartment you flagged, Morales said. She's not there. The place was clean, professionally clean. There were no prints, no personal items, no luggage. The only thing our team found was the overwhelming smell of industrial chlorine bleach. The landlord said she paid her rent 2 days ago, in cash, for the next 3 months. The smell, the odor of erasure. My stomach tightened. They got to her. It looks that way. Ms. Green, right now, Marin Hale is a ghost. I sank onto the edge of the bed, the cheap comforter rough against my skin. My star witness, the only one who saw the medication swap, had vanished. This is bad, I whispered. It gets worse, and it gets better, Morales said. Your friend, Nadia Volkov, she's a wizard. She finished the spectral analysis on that elevator audio file. The male voice, I said, trying to focus. The insurance value line, is it Marlo Green, the CFO? The male voice is still unidentified, but it's likely. He signed the policy. He's the financial architect, but he wasn't the only one in that elevator. Nadia found a second voice, buried in the high-frequency static, right at the end of the recording. She isolated it. Morales played the clip. I heard the hiss, the ting-ting of the echelon elevator. I heard the deep voice. The insurance value will balance the books. And then, a new sound, a woman's voice, crisp, cold, and impatient. One more signature is all it takes. I knew that voice. I had heard it just yesterday, ordering a notary, deflecting my grief. Aubrey, I breathed. Aubrey Klein, his assistant. She's the one, Morales confirmed. She was in the elevator. She's part of the financial loop. And now, look at the file I just sent you. A new file appeared on my secure channel. It was a video. I clicked it. Grainy, black and white footage from a high-angle camera. The timestamp read 2:17 a.m., the night before my mother died. The location, Kensington Medical Parking Garage. I watched as Aubrey Klein's silver sedan pulled into a space. She got out, looking sharp and awake in a dark pantsuit. She walked to the back of the garage, where a hospital security guard was waiting, smoking a cigarette. She didn't speak. She handed him a small, padded envelope, He handed her an identical one. The exchange, the swap, it took less than 5 seconds. Aubrey Klein wasn't just an assistant. She was the courier. She was the hand that delivered the tampered meds. The log was right, I said. Klein, she's the link. She connects the tower to the hospital. As I was processing this, my personal cell phone, the one I hadn't touched in a day, lit up. A blocked number. My heart hammered. I let it ring twice, then answered, my voice steady. Hello? Harper, this is Catherine Vale. Her voice was like warm honey, smooth and rich, the sound of $1,000 shoes on old marble, the sound of absolute, smiling betrayal. I know what you did, I said. Harper, dear, I know you're distressed, she cooed, her tone dripping with false empathy. I was your mother's closest confidant. I cared for her very deeply. Martin, he is a difficult man, but his heart is in the right place. He is deeply concerned about you. He's prepared to be very generous. Generous? He wants to establish a significant trust fund in your name, a memorial, to honor Isabel, to ensure your privacy. All he asks is that you stop this painful inquiry, sign the papers, put this to rest. Don't make a scene, I finished for her, the words like acid. Exactly, she said, relieved. You're a sensible girl. Take the money. Be safe. It's what your mother would have wanted. Did you tell her that, Catherine, when you were helping him bleed her accounts dry, when you signed her death warrant? There was a pause. The warmth vanished, replaced by ice. That is a terrible, baseless accusation. I am offering you an olive branch. I suggest you take it. I'm recording this call, Ms. Vale, I said. I wasn't, but I knew Morales was. A sharp metallic click. She hung up. The encrypted channel buzzed instantly. She's rattled, Morales said. That was a direct attempt at bribery, which we can now tie directly to the fraud and the shell companies. She's in. We're ready. We're going to set the trap. The 4 p.m. signing, I said. He'll be expecting me. No, that was his trap, in his tower. We're setting ours. We are going to accept Catherine's offer. We'll have your lawyer contact her to negotiate the terms of the trust. We're setting it for tomorrow, 10 a.m., a neutral location. My team will provide the notary, the office, everything. We're going to catch the entire chain of command in one room. Catherine, Aubrey, Marlowe, and your father. A cold, hard resolve settled over me. I'll do it, but I have 2 conditions. I'm listening. First, you find Marin Hale. I don't care what it takes. You find her, and you get her to safety. She's the only one who can testify about the meds. Second, you protect Vivian. Martin already knows she's a weak link. He told Aubrey he was going to scare her. He's hunting her right now. Vivian Cole is already under our surveillance, Morales replied. She ran to a diner in Northbridge. My team is picking her up as we speak. She's safe. A beat. As for Marin Hale, the chlorine isn't a good sign. Green. We'll put her picture out to every trooper in the state. But I can't make promises. We proceed with what we have. 10 minutes later, my secure device buzzed. A message from Morales. We have Cole. She's talking. Another buzz. A second later. This one was a forwarded image. This was just sent to Cole's phone. Morales' text read. I opened the image. It was a black and white photo, shot with a long lens, slightly out of focus, a single, bare tree branch, the unmistakable, gnarled bark of an elm. The text beneath it, next time, it will be bone. They were watching her. They were threatening her. They were reminding her. My device rang. Morales, patching Vivian through. Harper? Her voice was a ruin, stripped of all its icy hauteur. It was just raw, animal fear. I'm here. Vivian, you're safe. Morales has you. Safe? She choked out a laugh that sounded like a sob. He sent me a picture of the tree, the elm tree from the cemetery. He knows. Harper, he knows I talked to you. What about the tree? I asked, my voice low. Why that tree? What does it mean? It's. She stopped, taking a desperate, shaky breath. It's where I. It was years ago. You were 19. You came home from college for the summer. You found out. You found out I was moving in, that I was with your father. I remembered the humid summer air, the rage, the feeling of my world tilting. You confronted me, Vivian whispered, by the gates, under that tree. You called me a whore. You told me I was destroying your family. You were crying. I remember, I said. And I slapped you, she breathed, the confession tearing out of her. I hit you, hard, across the face, and you just stood there. You held back the tears. You wouldn't let me see them. And your father, Martin, he grabbed my arm so hard it left a bruise, and he hissed at me. Don't make a scene. It was the first time I saw the cage I had willingly walked into, the first crack in the whole damned house. She was sobbing now. He's reminding me that he owns my shame, that he owns me. The confession hung in the air. The woman who had been my personal villain, the ice queen who replaced my mother, was just another of his victims, a different kind of victim, but a victim nonetheless. He's right to be scared of you, Vivian, I said, my voice cold, not with anger, but with absolute clarity. You're the only one who can place him on those phone calls. You're the only one who can testify about the insurance policy, about his behavior, about his threats to Aubrey. You're the loose end he can't tie up. I can't testify, she wept. He'll kill me. He'll kill you anyway, I said, the truth of it landing like a stone. He'll pin the whole thing on you, the jealous wife. He's already laid the groundwork. You want redemption? You want to undo that slap under the tree? You want to get out of the cage? She was silent, just her ragged breathing. Then stand next to me at that signing tomorrow, I said. Be the witness. You owe my mother that much. You owe yourself that much. I cut the connection, leaving her with the choice. I got up and looked out the window. The gray utility van was still parked across the street. A pathetic, obvious tale. The Argus shield men. They thought they were watching me. My device buzzed. Nadia. Just so you know, your watchers have watchers. That gray van? It's got a federal bug on its chassis the size of a quarter. Morales has a countertail on them. They think they're hunting you. They're just being led. I pulled the curtain closed. I had less than 24 hours. I didn't need to write a speech. I didn't need to plan my grief. I just needed to be my father's daughter, cold, calculating, and ready to sign. I would walk into that room and dismantle Martin Green, not with tears, but with a pen. The invitation didn't come from a phone. It was a thick, cream-colored card, delivered by courier to my hotel room. A family lunch. My father's elegant script read, "It's time to heal." Heal. The word was a perversion. He meant silence. The house at Lake Opal was his monument to domestic perfection, a sprawling craftsman of cedar and glass. It sat on a private peninsula, insulated from the world by acres of old-growth forest. The rain had stopped, and a weak, watery sun broke through the clouds, making the lake glitter, a cold, false diamond. I was driven there by a federal agent in a nondescript sedan. I was bait, but I was not unprotected. I walked in. The dining room table was set for a feast. White linens, baccarat crystal, towering arrangements of white lilies that filled the air with their funereal scent. It was set for a celebration. Martin stood by the massive stone fireplace, a glass of mineral water in his hand. He was in casual slacks and a cashmere sweater, the picture of the relaxed, grieving patriarch. Beside him, stiff and pale, were Aubrey Klein and Marlowe Green, the whole team. "Harper," Martin said, his voice warm, enveloping. He opened his arms. "I'm so glad you came. This has all been a terrible misunderstanding." I didn't move. "Hello, Father." My gaze shifted. Vivian was already seated at the table, exactly as Morales had instructed. She was sitting directly opposite my chair. She wore a simple black dress, and around her neck, A heavy modern silver necklace. A panic button. Morales had called it. We called it a microphone. It was recording everything. I could see the pulse in her throat. A frantic, tiny bird beating against the metal. Her heart was pounding so hard it was visible from across the room. "Please, sit," Martin said. "Let's eat. Let's talk. As a family." We sat. The food was served by a silent, professional staff. It was beautiful. It tasted like ash. For a few minutes, there was only the sound of silver on porcelain. Martin led the performance, talking about the weather, about the market, about the beautiful service for my mother. Then he set his fork down. The performance began. "Harper," he said, his voice heavy with practiced sorrow. "I know this has been confusing. Your mother. She was a wonderful woman, brilliant, but she was not, well." I met his gaze. "Not well?" "She was unstable," he said, shaking his head sadly. Marlowe and Aubrey stared at their plates, co-conspirators in this second, posthumous assassination. The pressure, her art, it was too much. She was abusing her medication, painkillers, things I couldn't control. She was secretive. "So you had her medication changed," I said. It wasn't a question. We, Dr. Ward and I, we had to intervene," Martin said, his eyes shining with false sincerity. "We had to manage her dosage, to protect her from herself. What happened? It was a tragic accident. She must have gotten hold of something else, something we didn't know about. It was her instability that caused this. Harper, not my protection." He was building his defense, crafting the narrative that would save him. The unstable wife, the grieving husband, it was perfect. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I took a sip of water. "Then why?" I asked, my voice quiet, conversational. "Does the insurance policy specify undetermined?" Silence. Martin's performance stopped. The warmth evaporated. His eyes went flat. Marlowe Green, the CFO, flinched, a tiny telltale spasm of his eyelid. "That's a technical term," Martin said, his voice suddenly sharp. "Is it?" I pressed, keeping my tone light. "It seems specific. In the event of undetermined death, payout is accelerated and doubled. It's almost like you were planning for a scenario where no one could prove it was suicide, or an accident, or murder." Martin flinched. It was just half a second, a tightening of the jaw, but it was there. He had been hit. Aubrey, seeing her boss falter, rushed in. "Mr. Green was just securing the estate's assets. Harper, the paperwork is complex." She slid a thin folder onto the table, not the thick, fraudulent contract, but something else. "These are the preliminary asset reports." I looked at her hands. Her nails were perfect, a pale, neutral pink, all except her right index finger. On the side, near the cuticle, was a tiny, almost invisible smear of clear, rubbery residue, the kind of glue used to seal medical packaging, the kind I had smelled in the hospital receiving room. She had handled the vials herself. "You're very hands-on, aren't you, Aubrey?" I said, looking at her fingernail. She snatched her hand back, a flicker of panic in her eyes. "We all just want what's best," Marlowe Green interjected, his voice smooth and deep, the voice from the elevator. "Martin has been transparent. We've been working day and night to ensure Isabel's legacy. Why, just on April 12th. He stopped. He had said the date. April 12th. The day the cameras at Kensington Medical went dark for 17 minutes, the day before my mother died. He knew the date. He knew it by heart. I smiled. A thin, cold smile. "April 12th. That's a specific date. Marlowe, what happened then?" "It was a market fluctuation," he stammered, his eyes darting to Martin. "No, I think it was something else," I said. I looked at my father. "You taught me something. Once. Father, do you remember? When I was in my first year of architecture, you were looking at my blueprints." Martin stared at me, his face a mask of stone. "You pointed to a structural diagram, and you taught me about the cutting beam. The one beam that, if compromised, would bring the whole house down. You said, "Never forget. Harper, every structure has one. You just have to find it." I let the words hang in the air. I looked from Marlowe to Aubrey, to the forged signature, to the insurance policy. "You built this structure, Father, and you were so careful, but you taught me exactly where to look." Vivienne, who had been silent, her face as white as the tablecloth, suddenly moved. Her hand was shaking, but her movement was decisive. She picked up her water glass and stood, as if to make a toast, but she didn't toast. She stepped to the side, a clumsy, awkward movement that put her body directly between Martin and the small, decorative bookshelf in the corner. A bookshelf I now realized held a tiny, dark lens, a hidden camera, Martin's personal insurance policy. Vivienne had just blocked his view. She had chosen her side. Martin saw it, his face, already pale, turned to thunder, his eyes narrowed to slits. He didn't look at Vivienne, he looked at me. His voice came out in a low, vicious hiss, the voice I remembered from the phone call. "Don't make a scene." The old command, the words he had used to control my mother, to control Vivienne, to control me. The words that had ruled my entire life. I looked at him, and for the first time, I felt nothing. No fear, no desperation for his approval. The spell was broken. "I'm not the one making it, Father," I said. As if on cue, from outside, a sound cut through the silence, a sharp, insistent car horn. Beep, 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 beep. Not a guest arriving, a signal. The Argus Shield team. They were getting nervous, or they were getting the ready signal. My phone, sitting on the table, vibrated. I glanced down. A text from Morales. "Trap is set. He's cornered. Keep him talking. 10 minutes. I needed to push him. I needed to break the mask. "I won't sign anything," I said, "until I see the original, unredacted medical records, all of them, and the original toxicology report." "That's impossible," Aubrey said, too quickly. "Why? If it was an accident, you have nothing to hide. Get them. I'll wait." "They're on their way," Martin said, his voice strained. He was lying. He was trying to regain control. "Are they with Catherine Vale?" I asked. "Is she bringing them?" Martin's eyes flashed. He knew I had him. He was trapped, at his own perfect table, surrounded by his accomplices, all of them now looking at him, waiting for their next cue. And then Vivienne spoke. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the room like glass. "I'm sorry, Harper." Martin's head snapped toward her. "Vivienne, sit down." "No, Martin." She turned, her back to the hidden camera, and looked at me. The microphone on her necklace was aimed directly at him. "I'm sorry. For the slap. Under the tree." Martin looked confused. What are you talking about?" "She knows," Vivienne said, her voice gaining strength, her eyes locked on mine. "That day, you told me to be quiet. You told me not to make a scene. You grabbed my arm, and I obeyed. I've been obeying ever since. I stood by. I watched you poison this family. I watched you plan to... I'm sorry. Harper, I was a coward. He made me a coward." It was a full confession, a public unraveling. She had just handed Morales the entire case. Martin's face, which had been pale with rage, turned a deep, mottled red. The mask of the sophisticated patriarch didn't just crack, it exploded. He leaped to his feet, his chair crashing backward. He brought his fist down on the solid oak table. The crystal jumped, the lilies scattered, a wineglass shattered. "You!" he roared, his voice not human, a raw, primal sound of pure fury. He wasn't pointing at Vivienne, he was pointing at me. "You, ingrate! You did this! You, bitch!" The word echoed in the sudden, terrible silence. The staff had fled. Aubrey was frozen, her mouth open. Marlowe looked like he was going to be sick. The microphone had caught it all. The confession, the threat, the raw, unrestrained violence that had been hiding beneath the cashmere for decades. Martin stood there, breathing like a bull, his fists still on the table. He looked around the room, at the shattered glass, at the terrified faces of his co-conspirators. He looked at me. I hadn't flinched. He saw it. He saw the absence of fear. He saw the cold, clear eyes of his daughter, the architect, the one who understood cutting beams. He knew the lunch was over, the structure was coming down, the net was closed. The negotiation was set for 10 a.m. The location was not the Meridian Tower, with its cold displays of power, but a neutral, sterile conference room in a leased office building in the Old Mill District. It was a stage, meticulously set by Agent Morales. She had established a 3-ring perimeter. Ring 1 consisted of agents disguised as baristas and shoppers in the street below. Ring 2 was Nadia's tech team, set up in the building's server room, ready to intercept and mirror every byte of data that moved. Ring 3 was the arrest team, waiting in unmarked vans 2 blocks away, ready to collapse the net. I walked in at 9:55. Vivian was with me. She hadn't slept. Her face was a mask of pale, terrified resolve, but she hadn't run. She wore the silver necklace. It was heavy, and it was live. Her role was simple: be the witness. Sit, listen, and let the microphone do the work. The agent posing as the notary was already there, a bland man in a suit, meticulously arranging his desk. At 10:01, they arrived. Catherine Vale entered first, a vision in Armani, radiating confidence. "Harper, dear," she said, her voice like warm honey. "I'm so glad we're handling this with such maturity. It's what Isabel would have wanted." She was the legal face, the one who would represent the newly formed trust that was about to receive all of my mother's assets. She was the washerwoman for the blood money. Behind her, clipboard in hand, was Aubrey Klein. She was all business. "I have the finalized digital agreement," she said, tapping a slim black USB drive. My phone, in my pocket, vibrated once, a secure text from Nadia. "She's in. The stage is set. Let her plug it in." I knew what that USB was. It was the bomb. It contained a macro designed to infect the notary's system, complete the transfer, and then erase every digital log of the transaction, making it legally invisible. My phone vibrated again. Morales. "We have eyes on Green. He's in his car. 2 streets over. Parked near the bridge. He's on a satellite call. We think he's coordinating with his bank in Belize. He's waiting for the all-clear from Aubrey to wire the final, massive wave of cash out of the country. He's not even coming in. He's too cautious." The final piece of the puzzle arrived at 10:10. The door opened, and Martin Green walked in. He was late. His face was a thundercloud, his suit impeccable, but his hair was damp from the rain, and the cuff of his right sleeve was dark, soaked through. He hadn't come from home. He'd made a stop. Argus Shield, likely giving his final orders for the cleanup. "Let's get this over with," he snapped, his eyes avoiding mine. He sat at the head of the table. The agent notary cleared his throat. "Ms. Klein, if you would please insert the drive, I will load the agreement onto the main screen for all parties to review." Aubrey, oozing efficiency, stepped forward and plugged the USB drive into the desktop computer at the center of the table. On the large monitor, a small progress bar appeared. Loading agreement. I knew what was really happening. The instant she plugged it in, Nadia's counter program had activated. The USB thought it was running its deletion macro. In reality, Nadia had sandboxed it. It was running in a digital cage, while her program simultaneously and invisibly copied its entire hidden partition, a mirror of Martin's private server, straight to the federal cloud. The notary squinted at his screen. While this loads, a matter of procedure, Mr. Green, the trust agreement stipulates that the transfer is contingent on the final medical reports. I'll need the original, signed toxicology report and the original coroner's report to attach as exhibits. It was the stall. Aubrey went rigid. I I have the certified digital copies right here, on the drive. The trust bylaws are very specific, the notary said, pushing his glasses up. I must have the physical, original documents. I cannot notarize the signature without them. Catherine Vale laughed, a light, tinkling sound. A simple clerical error. These things happen. They're at my office. Of course, we can sign the transfer agreement today, and I will have them messengered over this afternoon. A simple contingency. I'm afraid I can't, the notary said, his voice flat. Martin's patience snapped. I don't have time for this incompetence, he snarled. We are signing today. My phone vibrated. Morales. Marlowe is initiating the transfer. He's not waiting for the all clear. He's moving the money now. The Belize account is active. We have to hold them. Let the money leave the account. Another buzz. Transfer initiated. We're moving to freeze the Belize account. Keep them seated. Father, I said, my voice quiet. Everyone looked at me. If it's just a clerical error, let's sign the rest. I'm tired. I want this over. Martin's eyes narrowed. Sensing victory, he thought my resolve had broken. See? She agrees. Give me the papers. We'll sign, and you can deal with your messenger problem later. Catherine, smiling, slid a thick stack of documents toward him. Just the signature pages. Martin, to expedite. Martin grabbed a heavy, gold-plated pen. He didn't read. He just signed. His name, a furious, dark scrawl. Page 1, page 2. He tore through them. He reached the last page, a document titled Appendix D, Schedule of Assets. He didn't even glance at the text. He signed the bottom. I watched the ink dry. He had just signed a full notarized affidavit, disguised as a boring financial appendix. It stated that he had full knowledge and authority over the medication changes for Isabel Green, including those protocols recommended and implemented by Dr. Lennox Ward on April 12th. He had just signed his confession. My phone vibrated one last time. Nadia. Got it. We have the drive image. We have the transfer logs. We have the signature. It's locked. We have everything. It was done. Catherine Vale, believing the transaction was complete and she had won, relaxed. She leaned over to me, her mask of professionalism softening into one of intimate, shared confidence. Her perfume was overpowering. Your mother, she whispered, her voice thick with a sudden, strange sadness. She wanted me to help you escape him. She asked me to set up a trust for you. To get you away from all this, I betrayed her. Harper, I betrayed you both. Her eyes were wet. She was confessing, to me. Simultaneously, my phone buzzed. Morales. Marlowe just gave the Plan B order. He's screaming into his phone. He's trying to activate his contingency. He's ordering Argus Shield to grab Marin Hale. Another buzz. A fraction of a second later. His team is reporting she's not at her apartment. They're compromised. He's panicking. Marlowe's fail-safe had failed. Morales had gotten to Marin first. She was safe. On the monitor, the loading agreement bar vanished. It was replaced by a single, stark white screen with red text. Access denied. Files corrupted. Aubrey Klein saw it. Her blood drained from her face. She knew. There's something wrong, she stammered, her hand darting out to yank the USB drive from the port. Too late. Nadia's text read, soft bricked. Aubrey frantically tried to shut down the computer. It wouldn't respond. The screen was frozen. The evidence was locked onto the local drive, which was now a federal forensic vault. The conference room door exploded open. FBI! Nobody move! Hands in the air! Agent Morales was front and center, sidearm drawn, her voice a whip crack that shattered the room. Agents flooded in, a whirlwind of blue vests and focused, terrifying calm. Catherine Vale let out a high-pitched, terrified shriek, her hands flying up. Aubrey Klein simply collapsed back into her chair, her face white, the useless USB drive clattering to the table. Vivian was sobbing, her hands over her face. the microphone recording her gasps of terror and relief. 2 agents grabbed Catherine, 2 more cuffed Aubrey. But Martin didn't freeze. He was a shark. He didn't wait to be consumed. He moved. While all eyes were on the agents flooding the front, he shoved the heavy oak table backward, crashing it into the notary. He smashed through the side door leading to the fire escape, not the main hallway. He wasn't running toward the street. He was running toward the river. "He's running!" Morales screamed. "Perimeter team, west exit. He's heading west." I saw him through the window, a dark suit sprinting down the alley. 2 agents from Ring 1 were already in pursuit, but he had a head start. He was fast. He was already on his phone, his thumb flying. He wasn't calling a lawyer. He was calling for extraction. "Plan B!" he roared into the phone, his voice echoing off the brick. "Plan B, now! Get me to the pier!" He vaulted a fence and was gone. Morales was on her radio, her face grim. "All units. He's heading for the water. He has a boat. Lock down the Greywater Pier." We weren't waiting for the federal transport. The moment Morales' team breached the room, I grabbed Vivian. "Come on." "Where are we going?" she gasped, her legs unsteady. "He's running to the water. He's going to Pier 7. We burst out of the side exit, the same one Martin had used. The alley was a wind tunnel, the rain already turning from a downpour into something solid, something violent. I didn't know how I knew. I just knew. The new Meridian was his ultimate escape hatch. "There," I pointed, a black sedan, unmarked, parked on the curb with the engine running, a chase car, Nadia. She'd thought of everything. I shoved Vivian into the passenger seat and slid behind the wheel. I floored it, the tires screaming on the wet pavement as we fishtailed onto the main road. The storm had finally broken. The sky was a sickly, bruised purple, and the wind was a physical thing, a wall of sound that buffeted the car. "He'll be there," Vivian whispered, her hands clasped so tight her knuckles were white. "He'll have the boat ready. He always kept it ready." We hit the coastal road. The bay was a nightmare of whitecaps, the water churning, furious. The wind shrieked through the telephone lines, a high-pitched, metallic whine, like 1,000 violin strings snapping, one after another. We skidded into the parking lot of the Greywater Pier, Pier 7, the private dock. The rain was horizontal now, stinging like needles. Through the deluge, I saw him. He was sprinting, his suit jacket gone, his white shirt plastered to his body. He was running down the long wooden dock toward the final slip, and moored there, its engines already thrumming. A low, powerful rumble that vibrated in my chest was the new Meridian. It was a 90-foot beast of white fiberglass and tinted glass, a monument to his arrogance, and it was his escape. He wasn't alone. On the deck, frantically untying the last of the mooring lines, was Marlowe Green, the CFO. At his feet was a large, black, waterproof duffel bag, the getaway cache. "They're leaving!" Vivian screamed. I didn't think. I just ran. I burst from the car, the wind nearly tearing me from my feet. I ran onto the pier, the wooden planks slick and treacherous. "Father!" He heard me. He turned. Just as he was about to step onto the gangplank, his face was a mask I had never seen before. It wasn't anger. It wasn't fear. It was just empty. The predator, cornered. I stopped, 10 feet away, planting myself in his path. The rain lashed between us. Vivian ran up behind me, her breath coming in sobs. She stood, not behind me, but beside me. "No more. Martin," she choked out. "It's over." He looked at us. 2 drenched, pathetic obstacles. He actually laughed. A harsh, barking sound that was ripped from his throat by the gales. "Get out of my way," he snarled. "You killed her," I said. The words simple, dead. "Your mother betrayed me first," he roared, his voice booming over the storm, a sound of pure volcanic rage. She was leaving. She was taking it all. The gallery, the accounts, everything. I built this company. I saved it. She was trying to destroy me. So you saved it with an insurance policy? I shouted back. You balanced the books with her life? I reached into my pocket, my fingers closing on the damp, laminated copy of the photograph Nadia had made for me. The red X. You're not even the man you think you are, I yelled. You think you're a kingpin? You're just a coward. I threw the photo, the wind caught it, and it slapped against his wet white shirt, sticking there like a second skin. He looked down, confused. That X, I screamed. It's not your handwriting. It's too passionate. It's too furious. It's not your cold, calculating scrawl. What are you talking about? He spat. Dr. Ward. It was his daughter, wasn't it? The little intern. The one who followed you around like a lost puppy. The one who worshipped you. She thought you were a god, and she thought my mother was the devil. You didn't even have the courage to do it yourself. You just let an obsessed, sick young woman destroy the evidence for you. The truth hit him. I saw it. The flicker of surprise. He hadn't even known. He had been so protected by his layers of denial. He didn't even know who his true accomplices were. The world erupted in light. 2, 3, 4 federal tactical vans, their sirens silent, screeched onto the pier, their floodlights cutting through the storm, pinning us all in a blinding artificial daylight. Martin Green! Agent Morales' voice on a loudspeaker, distorted, godlike. Hands in the air! You are under arrest! On the deck, Marlowe Green saw the feds. He didn't hesitate. He was a fox, not a shark. He saw the trap. In one fluid motion, he grabbed the heavy duffel bag and shoved Martin, hard, in the back. He's all yours! Pigs! Marlowe screamed, pushing my father off balance. Using him as a human shield, a diversion, Martin stumbled forward, off the gangplank, onto the dock. Marlowe spun, leaping from the far side of the yacht, disappearing into the darkness toward the water. Martin was cornered. Agents were moving in. He looked at me. He looked at Vivian. He did the only thing he knew how to do. He grabbed the closest asset. He lunged, not at me, but at Vivian. He pulled her in front of him, one powerful forearm crushing her throat, the other hand disappearing into his pocket. Back off, he screamed, his voice cracking. Everyone back off or I'll break her neck. He dragged her backward, toward the edge of the pier, his eyes wild. He looked at me, at the feds, at the world that was collapsing. I told you, he shrieked, his face inches from mine, his spittle hitting my face. I told you, don't make scene. It was his mantra, his final command, but Vivian wasn't the woman under the tree. She wasn't the woman at the lunch. She was done. With a guttural cry, she drove her elbow backward, into his solar plexus. He grunted, a sharp exhalation of air, his grip loosening for a fraction of a second. It was all she needed. She tore free, spinning away, collapsing onto the wet planks. In that same instant, I saw his other hand, the one from his pocket. It held his phone. His thumb was on the screen, on a custom app, a bright red button. Data self-destruct. He was trying to wipe the servers, the real ones, the backups. Nadia! I screamed, knowing she was listening through Morales' comms. He's wiping! Kill it! I lunged, not for him, for the phone, my movement, his unstable footing from Vivian's blow, the slick, oily patch on the wooden planks from a nearby bilge pump. It all happened at once. He saw me coming, twisted to protect the phone. His foot hit the oil. He didn't just slip. His feet went out from under him. He went over the edge. A terrible, scraping sound, and then silence. Save for the storm, I stopped at the edge. Morales' team froze. He was gone. No, I looked down. He was there. He hadn't hit the water. He had fallen, but his hand had caught a rusty, lower maintenance piling. He was hanging, one-handed, suspended over the raging, black water. The storm tore at him, his legs dangling, his billion-dollar suit ruined. He looked up. His mask of rage was gone, replaced by a raw, primal terror. Harper! he gasped, his voice thin, his grip slipping. "Please help me. Please. I'm your father. Harper, help me." The agents were yards away. It was just me and him. I could watch him fall. I could let the storm take him. It would be poetic. I looked at his face, the face that had haunted my entire life. I knelt on the wet planks. I leaned over the edge, and I extended my hand. He saw it. Relief flooded his face. "Good girl," he panted. "Good girl." He lunged for my hand, grabbing my wrist with a grip of steel. He started to pull himself up, but I didn't pull. I just held on. I braced myself, my arms straining against his weight, my fingers digging into his wrist. I held him. I kept him from falling, but I did not lift him. He looked at me, confused. "Pull! Pull me up!" "I'm not saving you," I said, my voice cold, calm, cutting through the wind. "I'm just holding you, so she can put the cuffs on." His face crumpled. The realization, the final, absolute betrayal. Agent Morales was beside me, leaning over, snapping a steel cuff onto the wrist I was holding. "Martin Green, you are under arrest." He started to fight then, a wild, animal thrashing. But it was too late. Morales and 2 other agents hauled him up, dragging him over the edge, a hooked fish. They slammed him onto the dock. As they cuffed his other hand, he twisted, spitting rain and bile. He looked at me, his eyes promising a new kind of hell. "I taught you this," he hissed. "I taught you how to be strong." I stood up, my hand aching, my arm numb. "No," I said, the rain washing his spittle from my face. "You taught me how to be afraid. I learned how to be strong all by myself." An agent called out from the parking lot. "We've got the other one, Marlo Green." He tried to ram the blockade, but his car stalled. I looked over. They had Marlo face down on the hood of his sedan. The duffel bag had split open on the asphalt. Bundles of $100 bills were plastered to the ground, dissolving into a black, pulpy mess in the torrential rain. I turned. Vivian was still on the dock, sitting, her arms wrapped around her knees. She was shaking. She looked at me, her face destroyed, her icy mask gone forever, washed away. "Harper," she whispered, her voice broken. I'm so sorry." I looked at her. The woman who had slapped me, the woman who had given me the key, the woman who had just saved my life. I was too tired for forgiveness. "Don't tell me," I said, turning toward the federal agents. "Tell it in court." The Greywater District Court was not built of marble and glass. It was built of dark wood, smelling of old wax, stale coffee, and the faint, metallic scent of anxiety. It was a room where things ended. The prosecutor, Diaz, was methodical. She did not perform. She dissected. She projected the wire transfers, glowing white on the courtroom monitors, a neon trail leading from my mother's accounts to the empty shells of Harbor Finch and Salt Rook. She introduced the mirrored USB drive from the notary's office. She displayed the Kensington Medical Pharmacy logs, the name A. Klein burning in the access column next to a timestamp of 2:17 in the morning. She played the raw audio from the Echelon 700 elevator, the ting-ting chime echoing in the silent room. Marin Hale was the first. Morales had found her. She had been living out of a motel in Idaho, paid in cash, terrified, and ready to run until she had no road left. Now, flanked by federal marshals, she was steady. She looked at the jury, her voice clear. She described the 17-minute camera blackout. She described Dr. Ward's agitation, my mother's refusal of the new protocol, and the access log violation. She pointed at Aubrey Klein. She was the one who accessed the cabinet. Catherine Vale was next, her plea bargain secured. The Armani suit was gone, replaced by a drab gray blouse. She was a different woman, smaller, stripped of her power. She wept. She confessed to her role, detailing the legal framework she had built for Martin to drain the accounts. She named Marlowe Green as the architect of the insurance fraud. She detailed the retainer agreement with Argus Shield to manage any loose ends, including the intimidation of Marin Hale and the surveillance of Vivian Cole. Then, Vivian. She walked to the stand, her steps measured. She looked, not at my father, but at me. Mrs. Cole, the prosecutor asked, please describe your relationship with the defendant. Vivian took a breath. I was his wife, she said, her voice quiet but clear, carried by the microphone. I was his property. She admitted to her knowledge of the insurance policy. She admitted to the threats she had relayed, and then she looked at the jury. He controlled every part of our lives, she said. The way we spoke, the way we dressed, who we saw. He is a man who demands absolute control. She paused, her gaze finding mine. Many years ago, I assaulted his daughter, Harper. I slapped her, under a tree, because she told the truth, and he told me to be quiet. He told me, don't make a scene. I was a coward. I listened. I am responsible for my silence. I am here today to stop being afraid. She had taken responsibility. She had handed the prosecution his motive and his method on a silver platter. The defense attorney was outmatched, but he tried. He did exactly as Martin had planned. He dragged my mother's name through the mud. A troubled woman, he boomed. Unstable, prone to erratic behavior, addicted to painkillers, a danger to herself. Diaz, the prosecutor, did not object. She waited. On her rebuttal, she produced the leather-bound notebook recovered from the safe. Your Honor, she said, the defense claims Isabel Green was unstable. This is her journal, recovered from the defendant's private safe. She projected the pages, not the chaotic ramblings of an addict, but page after page of meticulous, precise architectural notes. These, Diaz said, her voice ringing with cold fury, are structural analyses. My mother, she corrected herself, looking at me. Harper's mother, Isabel Green, was analyzing the load-bearing integrity of the Meridian North Tower. She was calculating the cutting beams. She was planning, with mathematical precision, how to dismantle her husband's empire. This is not the journal of an unstable woman. This is the work of a genius, planning her legal, financial escape from a tyrant. Diaz wasn't done. She called Nadia Volkov to the stand. Nadia calmly explained the process of spectral analysis, of isolating buried frequencies. Play the cleaned audio file, Diaz said. The court went silent. The ting-ting of the elevator, the deep male voice. The insurance value will balance the books. And then, clear as a bell, a woman's voice, sharp and impatient. One more signature is all it takes. It was Aubrey Klein. The voice was unmistakable. The time of the recording matched the elevator's internal logs, placing Aubrey and Marlowe together, discussing insurance value, moments after visiting Martin's office. It was my father's turn. He took the stand. He was, I had to admit, magnificent. He was the patriarch, wronged, grieving, and furious. He denied everything. The audio? A high-tech fabrication. The transfers? Standard asset management. Catherine Vale? A desperate liar. Vivian? A scorned, jealous, unstable wife. He looked at the jury, his eyes full of sincerity. I did it for the company, he boomed. I did it to protect my family. I did it to protect my wife's legacy from her own instability. Diaz let the silence hang before she approached him. To protect her? She asked, her voice a soft counterpoint to his roar. Is that why you signed this? She projected Appendix D, the final page from the notary's office. That's a financial schedule, my father scoffed, annoyed. Is it? Diaz said. Please read. For the court. Line 4. The one directly above your signature. He squinted at the monitor. He read the words aloud, his voice confident, then faltering. Hereby affirm full knowledge and authority over medication changes, including those protocols, implemented, On April 12th. His voice trailed off. His face, tanned and confident, went the color of wet ash. Diaz stepped closer. You didn't read it, did you, Mr. Green? You were in such a hurry to secure the money, to silence your daughter. You signed a full confession, no further questions. The closing arguments were a formality. Before the jury left to deliberate, the foreman raised his hand. Your Honor, the jury has a request. We would like to hear the audio recording from the lunch at Lake Opal. The one where Mr. Green raised his voice. The court was silent as Morales' team played the file from Vivian's necklace. We heard the scrape of the chair, the crash of the table, the shattering glass, and then my father's voice. Not the polished CEO, not the grieving husband, but the raw, cornered animal, roaring through the courtroom. You, ingrate! You did this! You, bitch! The silence that followed was heavy and absolute. The jury filed out. They were back in less than 1 hour. We stood. I watched my father. He was shaking, a fine, uncontrollable tremor in his hands. He looked across the aisle, his eyes desperate, locking on Vivian. Vivian, he barked, his voice cracking, one last, pathetic command. Tell them it's a lie. Vivian. Vivian Cole stood tall. She looked at me, a long, quiet moment. Then she turned, faced the judge, and turned her back on my father. I was afraid, she said, her voice clear and strong, ringing through the room. Not anymore, the foreman spoke. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder in the first degree, how do you find? Guilty. On the charge of wire fraud. Guilty. On the charge of insurance fraud. Guilty. On the charge of tampering with a witness. Guilty. The word hammered down, again and again. My father didn't roar. He didn't speak. He just folded. He collapsed into his chair, a hollow, expensive suit, the strings finally, irrevocably cut. The judge lifted his gavel, but before he could strike, a high-pitched, insistent beeping erupted from the evidence table. It was my father's phone, the one I had grabbed on the pier, a delayed alarm, his final, desperate Plan B self-destruct command. Still trying to execute, Agent Morales stepped forward, picked up the phone, her thumb moving over the screen. The beeping stopped. She powered it down. She had triaged it. She had silenced him, completely. The victim's family, the judge said, his voice heavy. Does the victim's family wish to make a statement before sentencing? All eyes turned to me. I stood. I walked to the podium. I had no paper. I had no speech. I reached into my coat pocket. I pulled out a single, laminated photograph. I placed it on the wood, facing the judge, facing my father. It was an old, faded picture. Me, at 7 years old, standing under the massive elm tree in our front yard. I was smiling, holding my hand up to the camera, proudly displaying a wide, bloody scrape on my palm from falling off a branch, a scar I still have. I said nothing. I let the photograph speak. My silent testimony, my scar, my tree. I returned to my seat. The judge was swift. Maren Hale was granted permanent federal witness protection. Aubrey Klein, in exchange for her full cooperation, received a reduced sentence. Marlo Green got the maximum for fraud, plus additional charges for money laundering. And then, the courtroom doors were pushed open. The first thing I noticed was the light. The heavy, oppressive gray-water rain had, at last, stopped. A pale, watery sun was breaking through the clouds, the air fresh and clean. I stepped out onto the courthouse steps. It was an explosion, a wall of cameras, of microphones, of shouting voices, a chaotic sea of flashing lights. Harper! Harper! Over here! What do you have to say? Harper, how does it feel? They swarmed, a wall of noise, demanding a soundbite, demanding a performance. I stopped. I looked at the sea of faces, all of them shouting, all of them needing a spectacle. I thought of my father. I thought of his one, constant, controlling refrain. I leaned forward, toward the closest microphone. The shouting, miraculously, died down. I spoke, my voice quiet, but it carried in the new, clean air. "The truth," I said. "The truth doesn't need to make a scene. It makes enough noise on its own." Thank you so much for listening to this story. We would love to know where you are listening from. So please comment below to connect and share your thoughts. Make sure to subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and give us an extra boost by hitting the hype button so more people can hear this story.